I have the absolute privilege of introducing our speaker for the day, Mr. Steve Austin. If you're expecting like smoke and lights and like
beer cans on foreheads,
that's a WWE wrestling thing. Look it up, you'll see what we're talking. But no, I've had a chance to get to know Steve since we were able to connect like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. Really excited. I mean, this guy has a pretty cool story, fits right in with the Vox culture. So hopefully, we can all gain something from this. Just a quick note, it is a little bit of a heavier topic. So we do have our community pastors available if you're feeling like, something just, gets triggered in the process. But yeah, it should be some good stuff. There will be some Q&A and whatnot. With that, we'll welcome Mr. Steve Austin to the mic.
Thank you. Let me grab this chair. The older folks in the room are like, what are you talking about, a wrestler who's a bionic man? I've never seen it, never. Never, sorry, it's true. I'm going to steal this stand. I hope that's okay. Stella, if it's not, I don't care. Where is she? Hi. Okay, let me get my super professional speaker notes out. Wow. That's not a $6 million. I think it's a $6 chair. What's going on here?
I bought Steve a Pepe's breakfast burrito this morning.
That's awesome. Yes. How funny. Well, hey, thanks for having me. This is actually Andy's fault, right? And then Casey extended the invitation. So if it's really good, I'll give you my website. If it's not, you can blame Andy and Casey. That's how it goes. Hey, I want to start with a poem. And I want to invite you, if you will, to close your eyes for a minute. Do we need it? Do I need the microphone? Everybody good?
No.
Okay. There we go. Okay. So, if you will, close your eyes, and you can consider this a prayer if you want. It's by David Tennyson, a poet from Australia, and the title of the poem is "Oh God." Oh God, 5 letters, 2 words, 1 exhale, full stop. Oh God, all my voice could say, trusting that my very being would fill in the detail. Oh God, hand over mouth, hand over heart, your hand over me, I hope. Oh God, a prayer, a cry, a summons, a summit. Oh God, 5 letters, 2 words, 1 exhale, full stop. So, why are we talking about mental health at Christmas, right? Nothing says Santa Claus like suicide. That's the last joke I'll make today. So I am Steve Austin, and from Birmingham, Alabama. I try really hard not to sound like it, but that's where I'm from. Born and raised, so roll tide. And I was a pastor 7 years ago when I nearly died by suicide. Casey mentioned in the introduction that this is a heavy topic, obviously, and if you feel overwhelmed, if you need to step out, please feel free to do that. I know the community pastors are kind of looking out for folks, so if it gets a little too heavy for you, it's all good. So born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, super conservative, fundamental Christian home. Church was everything. It was the center of our life. It was the center of our community. The Baptist and Methodist Church kind of held the corner market on religion where I grew up. And In all of that, when I was a preschooler, I was molested. The neighbor boy who lived across the street was 17, and I was 3 or 4. Abused me when I was just a little bitty boy. And it was, the family I grew up in, it was, Jesus was the answer for everything. You take this magic Jesus pill and everything's just going to be all right. And we didn't know anything about counseling or medication or therapy or these other practical resources, because if your situation didn't sort of get fixed miraculously overnight, you just didn't have enough faith. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So that's the world I grew up in. That's the world I was in for the first 30 years of my life. And not always easy. You know, when life happens, boy, that's kind of tough and unfair. It can feel really toxic. So that's the beginning of my story. That's my very first memory is the abuse. And that can really shape things and change things for you when that's your very first flash of memory. So back to why we're talking about mental health today. There are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows. Perfect. So everybody on the 3rd row all the way across, will you stand up just for a second? 1 in 5 in the United States and around the world will experience mental illness at some point this year. So this is about 1/5 of our folks here today, and that's what that looks like for your community. Thank you so much. 1 in 5. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in the United States from age 10 to 34. It's a really big deal. Someone dies around the world every 40 seconds by suicide. And so in the time I've been talking, how many people? It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. Good morning. Welcome to church. So why at Christmas? You know, we sang, "Oh, Come All You Faithful." Beautiful song. Joyful and triumphant, and you know, we see the halls decked and the Christmas trees up, and it's so joyful and triumphant. But it's not for everybody. And so I think it's really important, and I'm so grateful for pastors who will, and communities who will open their doors and say, yeah, this is a conversation we need to be having. There was a poll done by Lifeway Research a couple of years back. 75% of the pastors polled said that mental illness was a problem in their community, but only 25% believed it was a problem in their church. Yeah. Yeah. The stats are staggering. So, "Oh Come All You Faithful" is this beautiful, triumphant song, and we feel the Christmas spirit. But I think sometimes we forget this little baby born in a manger who taught us how to be fragile. So I want to read something to you. Okay, Luke 2:12. This is what you're to look for: a baby wrapped in a blanket, lying in a manger. Anne Lamott says we wait and hope appears if we truly desire to see it. How long had Israel been looking for the Messiah? They've been waiting for a very long time on the military powerhouse to come and sit on the throne with God and smash their enemies to bits. That's what they were looking for. Can you imagine what the wise men must have thought when the angels surrounded them in the field, God's glory blazing around them like fire? What a grand announcement it would be. But wait, what? God wanted them to look for a baby in a blanket lying in a manger? A manger? Like cows and chickens and donkeys? Oh my. I'm sure the shepherds thought that the angels must have been smoking something. Now that's legal here, it's not legal in Alabama. So. This announcement made no sense. In essence, the angels told the shepherds, look for fragility. Look for vulnerability, they said. It will lead you to courage. Look for weakness, they nudged. It is there you'll find the glory of God. Keep your eyes peeled for gentleness, the angel declared, because the world is hardened enough. As someone with a diagnosed mental illness, I live in the tension of embrace fragility and in this world you will have trouble. For the longest time, those two concepts seem to go together like oil and water. Don't you have to be strong if you're facing trouble? Nearly dying by suicide changed all that for me. When I woke up in an ICU hospital room after surviving a suicide attempt, the last thing I wanted to be was vulnerable. I'd mastered the art of sweeping my pain under the rug and permanently affixing my "Isn't Jesus lovely?" mask for the world to see. But after undergoing years of therapy, needing medication because my brain isn't quite wired like everyone else's, and being forced to ask for help, I can tell you that vulnerability is the only path to freedom. Don't take my word for it. Look at the life of Jesus. From the birth in a manger to death on a cross, we see Jesus embracing his own fragility, his own vulnerability. In addition to that, he's constantly surrounding himself with those who were anything but strong. A blind man, a woman with a bleeding problem, a guy overcome by demons, a man who'd been crippled nearly 4 decades. Embrace fragility, it seems, was the mission statement of the man. So that's what I want to talk about today, is embracing our fragility. How do you reconcile this faith that we have that is so important, this hope that we have in Jesus, and yet there was a season when I just wanted to run my car into the overpass and make all that pain disappear? How do you do that? How can you be a Christian and also have struggles? Well, it's because we're human first, I think, before we're anything else. I want to show you a quick video from my wife that will sort of summarize my story, and it will give you her side of the story. I don't think that we hear from survivors enough, caregivers. So this is Lindsay's story.
Hold on.
In a moment, this is Lindsay's story. Drum roll. That's not good. No, if we can't do it, it's fine. We move on. I mean, it's really good, but we can move on. No pressure.
Art can do anything.
So I'll bring you up to speed to kind of where this video picks up our way. So the abuse, my parents discovered the abuse at bath time. I was still, just this little bitty boy getting a bath at night.
7 Septembers ago.
Hold on.
So it's good?
Almost.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm gonna keep talking for a second, and I'll cue you again. So my parents discovered it at bath time, and they were very, very young and didn't know any better, and they threatened this neighbor boy within an inch of his life the next day and said, "Don't ever step foot on our property again or we'll call the police." And we moved on. Absolutely the wrong approach, parents. Don't ever, ever, ever do that. Please, God, call the police, get social workers involved, get help for your children. My parents and I have worked through that, and I love them, but it was a huge mistake. And they just thought, here's this tiny little boy who's never going to remember this. That was their thinking at the time. And they were right for about 15 years. I didn't remember it. And I was a senior in high school. I had my first flashback and panic attack. I was on a field trip, and I thought I was having a heart attack. My heart's beating out of my chest, sweaty palms, knot in the stomach. And I'm having this, the only way I knew to describe it at the time was like having a nightmare wide awake. Flashes of memory, and I can hear, and it's not like psychosis, but I can hear and see things going on, and it was terrifying. And I went home that afternoon and told my mom these sort of flashes of memory I'm having, and she just started sobbing because she realized that little boy did remember. And we prayed. We asked Jesus to fix it. And we didn't talk about it again for another 12 years. Yeah, lots of lessons to learn. 12 years later, The anxiety has increased dramatically. The depression is just nearly unbearable. The panic attacks, the flashbacks. I had been that guy who everybody thought was on top of the world. I was the cheerleader, the encourager, everybody's friend, always positive and upbeat, and dying inside. Didn't want anybody to know it, because again, in the world I grew up in, you can be Christian or you can be crazy. Terrible word, don't use it. But that was you couldn't be both. There was no integration. And so I was 29, serving as a youth pastor and a worship pastor. I had been married 5 years. My little boy would turn a year old the next day. And I finally believed the lie that it would be better for my family if I just disappeared, that I was a burden. That was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. And that's the way it is for most people. They believe, once you get to that point where you believe I'm just a burden, you believe the lies that shame tells us, that it's always going to be this way, it's never going to get better, no one believes you, right? Shame works in extremes that way. No one's going to believe you, no one cares. I believed those lies and tried to die in a hotel room a couple hours from home. And woke up about 24 hours later on an ICU mental health floor, and there was my wife standing at the end of the bed. And that's kind of where this video comes up.
Well, my husband overdosed in a hotel room while I was shopping for my son's first birthday. It's not like I was unaware that there were problems. I just didn't realize the depth of his despair. It was a hot September afternoon. I was walking through the furniture section at World Market when my phone rang. The caller ID referenced a hospital 2 hours away. Normally I wouldn't answer, but my husband was working an out-of-town assignment in that same city. I could hardly form words to answer the nurse's questions. I was doing my best to give accurate information, but it felt like my legs were barely holding me up. I was weak, a weakness I've never experienced before, fragile, like a strong gust of wind might have blown me over. She wanted to know about regular medications. When was the last time we'd spoken? What were his intentions? I hadn't seen my husband in about a week, and I wasn't totally sure of his current mental state. I wondered if I was going to lose the love of my life. I left the store, frazzled, in a hurry. I called my best friend, who immediately left work and packed a bag and picked me up. I was in no shape to drive. The shock had me frozen, numb, listless. When we made it to the ICU floor at the hospital, the nurses ignored the fact that we were there after visiting hours and led us to Steve's room. At this point, I had to ask my husband the hardest question I'd ever asked. "Did you mean to do this?" I asked blankly. "Do you want to die?" To the girl surviving suicide, this is going to be ugly. Your loved one has survived, but there's still grief to process. You don't want to believe it. You also don't want anyone else to know the horror you're walking through. Surviving suicide takes lots of support, including therapy. There will be moments and days when it just seems easier to give up and walk away. No one would blame you. I have those same thoughts more times than I'd like to admit. Just take this baby and start over. That version of my life seems so much easier. Yet there were other moments. I'd catch myself staring into that little boy's eyes, and I'd see so much of his daddy in him. I knew leaving would mean that Ben would only know the worst version of his father. So I stayed. I kept fighting for a better life with my little family. Thankfully, my husband did choose to fight, and over time, our days together got easier and brighter. Surviving suicide didn't happen overnight. I don't think true healing comes that way. It happened through years of confession in the counselor's office. Healing came through prayer-filled conversations with my best friend, telling her about my deepest fears. We continue to heal today by telling each other the truth and never being afraid to ask for help. P.S. If you're listening to this months or more after the suicide attempt, and you still haven't gone to therapy, I don't know how you'll ever heal. I don't mean to sound hopeless, but surviving suicide means navigating deep betrayal and mental illness. The help of a mental health professional was the only way Steve and I were able to move forward. You can't ignore that kind of pain forever.
She's pretty great. Survivors just don't get, their story told enough. And so it's actually the first time I've shared this at a speaking engagement. But I think it's really important, those caregivers who love us unconditionally and drive us to therapy and make sure we're taking our meds and remind us of our worthiness. Oh my gosh, so grateful. So life post a suicide attempt. The first year for us was really quiet. Some people don't understand and don't agree with our choice, but we didn't talk about it for a year with anybody. There were, 5 or 6 people that knew what happened. Everybody else, we lied and told them I had pneumonia. That's why I was in the hospital. And our reasoning for that is, if you've ever lost somebody and you're there at the funeral and you're standing by the casket and people are coming by to grieve, and you're grieving, you're crushed, and you're having to comfort them as they come by, it just almost feels unfair. And so we said, you know what, we've got to heal. If this marriage is going to work, if we're going to stay together, if I'm going to heal, we need to get really quiet and kind of huddle up and have this unified front. And so that's what we did for the first year. Lots and lots of therapy every week, individual therapy, marriage counseling, getting meds regulated, figuring out how to make that brain work the best way that it can. You know, the brain's an organ just like your liver. So that was the first year. From there, lots of boundaries, figuring out who your safe people are, who are those trusted inner circle people. A 90s reference, who are your ride or die homies, right? Who can you tell anything to, and they will hold it in confidence and keep you safe, but also love you enough to tell you the truth. When they see those red flags, hey, here's something I'm noticing, this is a pattern, are you okay, is everything good? That's really important. And wrestling with my faith, oh my goodness. Trying to find out who is this, because I knew, the way I was raised, I knew so much more about hell than I did about Jesus, right? So much more about fear, shame, and guilt, and hope, and unconditional love. I didn't know about that God. And so, lots of reimagining faith, and finding that hope again, finding a new faith community that could give that. Boy, yeah, it was a big deal. And then I mentioned shame earlier, working through shame, reading Brené Brown's books. Oh my goodness, Daring Greatly, The Gifts of Imperfection. Those 2 books probably had a bigger impact on our marriage, even more than marriage counseling. Marriage counseling was wonderful, but they probably had an even bigger impact on us, even in counseling. So, lots of honesty, lots and lots and lots of uncomfortable honesty, being willing to say, I'm not okay some days. I'm still not okay some days. And that's really important, to be able to tell your trusted people that. And then knowing who's not safe. Who are the people that you can't trust? Who are the people that you need to kind of make those boundary lines a little wider? I think we probably all have some of those, sometimes in our family tree. And getting really clear on what you're going to share and what you're not going to share, I think is very. So, that's kind of my story. How about we do some small group discussion? How's that sound? How do you want to do this, Casey? Just kind of circle up? What do we do here?
Yep, well,
Yeah, circle
everyone
up.
can
Y'all
just,
know what to do?
we
Right?
got the drill
I'm gonna
down.
do that. So the plan here is I've got 3 prompts, and then I'm hoping we can all kind of huddle back up and have Q&A with everybody. So I'll give you the first prompt. The first one is just, what are your thoughts on what you've just heard?
Just in case you wanted to know this, you might not care, and I don't, it's fine, you don't have to care. Bob Mooney, was having Blue Christmas service tonight.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, one of those, if you've had a loss.
Oh, okay.
This is not easy this year. I don't know all the rest of the details, but
Okay.
if anybody asked.
Sure.
I'm going to set a 3-minute timer so I can respect your time.
Did I hear somebody who this is the first time here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I think you're going to be prompt. Was there going to be a prompt? So I don't know if there's
What'd you think about this conversation? Bad.
Oh, okay.
What'd you think? Holy cow, it was a lot. What'd you think?
It seems, but I mean, lately it's been in the news to suicide and how much it's increased, and I think about the technology.
Something again, because it's weird, I haven't been here in a long time, and I thought I was going to walk today and see how much it's changed. And this weekend, I'm concerned with how to find a therapist for my son to talk to, because he works at a shooting range, and we can have someone went into the shooting range and shot themselves right in front of my son. And my son's 22, and he was in charge of getting all the firearms safe, clearing everybody out, and he checked by the shoot off for the 19-year-old. And my son's kind of having a hard time with his husband in there. And it was, you know, my son's 22 and this was a 19-year-old, and you don't want them to look at it and go, oh, is that an answer, or why did he do this? And it was weird that this was
Wow.
today.
Is it difficult, are you looking for somebody now? I mean, is it difficult to find
Right.
a therapist that can?
You know, I want my son to have a good first
Sure. Positive,
encounter with a therapist, because it takes like that, you know, and he kind of get back and forth. You mentioned someone yesterday who was kind of struggling, and they pretty much said that you need to help someone, and you need to tell us that you did, and you need to tell us that you saw that.
They didn't talk about it.
No, and I really think that it wasn't enough from him, or it wasn't kind enough that he's having trouble and he's in it's affecting his school where he's a lot. So, I mean, he saw, it was 4 feet from him when it happened. Yeah, and he doesn't, you know, he's a strong kid, that program for not jumping in and like a 19-year-old boy.
That's me.
And is that you, Tom? Yeah.
Okay, friends, time's up. So, second prompt. Second prompt is this. Mental health is spiritual health. True or false? Why or why not? Mental health is spiritual health. True or false? Why or why not? 3 minutes.
Yeah, I am a therapist. It's just my opinion. Mental health is a spiritual issue, but it's also physical, emotional, relational. It's not just one thing. A person asked me a question once, pastor asked the community pastors, what's the easiest thing to fix out of those issues? And his point was it's spiritual because if you believe the power of the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirit can handle that part of it, but to dismiss the rest of it, that's what the church has been doing for decades. So if you're, well, as Steve said, you know, the church, I remember, for instance, hearing somebody say, well, what is, you know, Carol and I went to marriage counseling a long time ago, and somebody said, what do they do before, what did the church do before there was marriage? You know, in a dismissive way, as if, you know, people have got to walk through this without help. Oh, people just got the books to do, that's what happened. And then they were kicked out of the church for doing it. So, you know, that's my parents. So, that's my answer. Yes, it is. It's a very big area. And to deny trauma is such a huge thing. Not every lesson as a child, but traumas get in there. They don't get resolved, they don't get good therapy, and they stick in a part of your brain that when something else happens that you might do, bang, it just goes off, and you have no control over it. So, that's
Got about a minute.
yes. When the 9/11 shootings came, I did therapy.
Yes.
A lot of big shootings. And, you know, my main message was I wasn't charging anybody, we were just trying to get people to the right place. So, go to therapy, please. Here's the mark of what's happening to you if you're not doing it. It's tough to get people to go because, like when you said, trying to find a reserve, I'm personally not doing so I still got to get back to it. I know there's a lot of terrible scenarios.
All right, one more. Last one. Last question. Who makes up your trusted inner circle? Why? Who makes up your trusted inner circle? Who are your safe people? And why?
Do you? I don't know, I'm kind of
Does anybody have a trusted person? So the first part of what you said is I can tell you that A lot of answers for you in these situations. People say, "Oh, yeah, you should do this."
Yeah, I feel like they just accept it.
That's not a plug for therapy, but that's what therapy is. Therapy is not to something to tell you how to live your life. The only time I tell people how to live their life is if they're about to hurt themselves really bad. What change? Listening to somebody, accepting who they are, helping them figure out in their mind what the answers to their life is. You don't know.
30 seconds.
And sometimes you get good therapy, but just if you remember, it was interesting about this. A guy from Maryland, he's teaching the entire church of Maryland how to have emotional intelligence, which I love to do at dogs. We all become
All right, friends, that's
healthy
it.
in that way.
We will kind of wrap up, and we'll huddle back up and have a full Q&A here. Awesome. Who's going first? No pressure. What stands out from your small group? Yeah.
Just the relatability of this experience of suffering, grief, pain, and however that looks for each person. That's their experience.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I love Emmanuel, right? God with us. We talk about it at Christmas time. But God with us, right? God, the God of Psalm 139, even if I make my bed in hell, you are with me, right? Or let's go Romans 8, right? What can separate us from the love of God? Nothing, not famine, not principalities or powers or race or sexuality or mental health. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. I think that's so important. What else? Good talk. Questions?
I think another thing that came up is the common experience of if you should just be able to pray it away.
Yeah.
And the shame of not being able to pray it away. And the repercussions from that are, it's pretty common. And I think that's something that it can be very hurtful.
This is going to be like off in left field maybe for all of you. I don't know. It is for me to even say it. But I wonder sometimes if that mentality comes from our capitalistic mindset, right? It's win or lose. Everything is win or lose. There's no room for the gray, for the struggle, for that kind of in-between space. Everything's win or lose in a capitalistic society. And I think it drips down into all sorts of things. So yeah, it's tough. Do I believe in miracles? Yeah. But I think they're called miracles for a reason, because we don't see them. And not those big, Benny Hinn with the hanky knocking it. Like, we don't see that every day. Come on. But the miracle that this God who created it all is present with me in my suffering, that is a miracle.
But I think that if we go the pray away version, that we miss the point that Jesus really is calling us into community. And he wants us to walk and take down those walls so we can actually share and actually be real with each other. That's what he's calling us.
Absolutely. Come to the table.
And that's exactly.
Yes. Yes. Who Who was in the back over there with the hand raised?
The miracles happen, both event miracles, but before the event miracles, often it's the little tiny daily miracles of revelation and understanding and transparency and confession that literally prepare our heart for when God is actually, so overwhelmed us that we can actually come into an event, quote, miracle.
I love that.
He healeth the broken in heart, and he binds up our wounds. But before we get there, we go through the denial and the anger and all of the other emotions, processing the wounds and the hurts. And then suddenly there's a sort of strike of lightning in our soul and a revelation that allows us to move up another level and take another step in our maturity that's more bold than the previous ones, more clear.
Beautiful. Thank you. Somebody? Yeah.
Something that came up with us is how hard, the challenges of finding good help. First of all, the stigma of asking for help, and then finding the good help that's actually going to help. I think that's a challenge that's really hard to overcome in this society because of the way that things are set up. Like we talked about how to even get help right now. We have to go to Kaiser, and you just get randomly assigned to somebody, and you just kind of hope that they're okay, and they're not a whack job. But
Anybody done any of the online therapy, BetterHelp or Talkspace, any of that? So good. So my therapy is BetterHelp. So my therapist is right here in my phone. I can access 24/7 text message, phone call, video. I'll have to schedule a phone call or video call, but we text all the time. And if she doesn't hear from me for 2 or 3 days, she messages me just to say, hey, what's up? How are you doing? I'm in crisis mode, let's say. I got to schedule 2 weeks out for an appointment. That's a nightmare. I can send her a text and go, oh my gosh, I'm having the worst day. Help me process this. And she'll text me back. So it's not for everybody. Not everybody can afford it, but it's wonderful. I love it. So something to think about for sure. Yeah. What else? Yes, ma'am.
Have you met that person?
Have I met my therapist?
The one on the phone?
Through the phone and through video, like FaceTime. But no, not in person. Yeah. What else?
What we're talking about is how interconnected and how related mental health is spiritual health.
Yeah.
And how much of each other affect each other.
Yeah.
And actually, is it actually possible to be separated? And how does that play in how much does one affect the other?
Yeah. What do you think? What did you decide? Mental health, spiritual health? Yes? No? Maybe?
Something I was thinking about, we touched on a little bit, was really depends on perspective. Certain cultures, like we look at mental health in this society and something we would call a mental problem or a mental health issue in a certain society would be seen as a gift. Like shamans and healers were often like what we would call schizophrenic.
Sure.
And there was
John the Baptist.
There was meaning to that experience. And so perspective is really important, and I think it also depends on how you define spiritual health. And if we define it as understanding how everything is like interconnected and how we're part of something bigger than ourselves, then it can give meaning even to your mental health crisis, and so therefore you're not separated from the spiritual connection even in the moments of crisis.
This guy. Have a conversation with this guy. That's good stuff. Yeah. And mental health is all throughout the Bible. You look at Elijah lying down by the broom tree, right? Going, God, just let me die. Tell me that's not a conversation about someone's mental health. Look at Jesus in the garden. I know I'm not supposed to say it, but look at Jesus in the garden. If there is any other way, I don't want to go through this. I don't want to do this. Right? He did, but he didn't want to. The human Jesus didn't want to do it. Read the Psalms through the lens of a manic depressive. Right? And I'm not being funny. I mean, it's this constant up and down. Oh, praise the Lord Most High. Oh my God, it's the worst. I'm going to die. It's constant. So mental health it's all throughout the Bible. And how are we in time? I have no idea.
We're a little over, but.
We're over, okay, all right, cool. So,
Can I
Couple-
say something
yeah.
about that? I feel like there's just a struggle within both mindsets, and there's not an agreement. Like, I feel like in the spiritual realm, if you lean too much to the mental realm, you're not faith-filled enough.
sure.
Or, you know, sometimes in the mental world, well, I don't know if reading the Bible is, so there's tension even in that. If there was a marriage that was accepted and maybe explored, I think there would be a lot more healing that's happened. Because I grew up in a church where, yes, oh, don't go see a therapist because you don't have enough faith.
Yeah.
So they're at war with each other. If there was a way to marriage those two together, which I love what we're doing here, I think a lot of people can find healing in knowing that they could blend together in a healthy way
Yes.
to create healthy people.
Come on, Pastor. Yes.
No, the,
Not anymore.
In keeping with what he just said, the New Testament word for soul is suke. We get our word psychology from it. One of the New Testament words for healing is therapal. We get our word therapy from it. Jesus said, I have come to heal the broken heart. And so this idea, when we understand the soul is more than just our mental, but it's also our emotional, it's our will, it's our subconscious, it's our conscience. There's a whole mixture of things that all go together to create who we are and our identity in our soul. And it is the very integration of those things that the New Testament speaks of, and a renewed mind, a mind that begins to work the way God created it to, as we really deal with the issues in our heart. If we hold on to anger and bitterness and resentment and hatred and unforgiveness, that bubbles up right into our brain,
Sure.
and it actually causes the dichotomy of, well, the Bible's over here, and you know, intellectual prowess is over here, and intellectual integrity, and oh, but the Bible. But when you start dealing with the issues of your heart, then the mind and the soul becomes an integrated unit, an identity that can walk in love, that can walk, you know, in the process of healing, that can hear what other people are saying. And then we actually begin to operate as a body with each other in a therapeutic environment.
Yeah.
Confess your faults one to another that you might be healed. I mean, if we just had great friendships that were based in love and transparency and honesty, we'd probably be just a lot healthier.
That's beautiful. Yeah. All right, my last question from me to you, and I'd love to hear 2 or 3 responses, 12, whatever. What are you going to do as a community, right, to honor the mental health of each other as this Christ-based community where you're safe to belong? What is that going to look like for you? How are you either going to continue doing the great things you're already doing or improve on what you're already doing? A couple of practical ways that you can do that. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
So as a community, we have funds available for people who need counseling, who want counseling. That is one of our values. We set aside a line item in our budget. So if this is something that you need to do, you want to do, come talk to Casey or me, and we'll get you taken care of. This has been an ongoing thing that we have been doing. It's currently happening too. There are dollars there. Okay?
Yes. What else? That's awesome.
A
Yes,
few of
ma'am.
us are getting together that have just identified we want to be to support to each other. We don't have formal small groups, but we're starting to form little groups so we can just see more transparent.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Anything else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need to be honest about it, like in, our little breakout groups, like when we're talking about, who's who makes your trusted inner circle. It's like, yeah, husbands, wives, and I've got a friend here or something like that, but just sharing about like something that I went through, that when you go through depression and you can't go to your spouse, then or people who don't have that support group, I think part of it is we see each other on a Sunday and we're all, hey, how's it going, and yada yada yada. but we don't know what's going on, you know, Monday through Saturday, or when we're hurting, when we're in need.
Yeah.
And so be able to be vulnerable, be honest, be transparent with each other.
Thank you for that. So if you're the one person sitting here who goes, oh my gosh, I've never had an experience with mental health, and I don't know if I can be that safe person for somebody, look, take the pressure off. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to be the psychiatrist or the therapist. You just be a friend. You just practice presence and say, hey, you know what, I don't have this experience, but I love you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to make sure you're safe. I'll drive you to the doctor's office if I have to, or to the therapist, or whatever that is. You just be a decent human. Like, it really, that's all it boils down to is, I may not get this and I may not have the answers, but I love you and we'll figure this out together. Yeah?
I think the easiest thing that some people overlook is just a question of
What do you mean?
because, like you're saying, you're not a therapist, you don't have answers.
Yeah.
The best thing you can do when someone says, oh, I'm struggling, what do you need?
Yeah. Because most of the time you do know what you need.
Yeah, I need
Yeah.
to not be alone on a Friday night.
Yeah.
I need a coffee.
Yeah.
I need a nap.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. And it's a good thing, it sounds like a pop up too. You need to have answers. What
Yeah.
they usually come up with.
Fantastic. Communion time, friends. It's my favorite thing we do in the church, is communion. Because I see Jesus saying, trade your brokenness for mine, trade your wounds for mine. You feel wounded and hurt, and you believe the lie that you're separate. Well, let me remind you with this bread, with this wine, that you'll never be separate, that you've never been separate, that you're not separate now. So, we've got stations set up. I'll pray real quick. I think musicians are coming, yes? Yeah, awesome. And we'll commune together like we've already been doing. Holy, beautiful, wonderful, matchless, loving God. Thank you so much for becoming one of us, for stepping into our pain, for stepping into our human experience, for loving us without condition, without compare. There is none like you. And I'm so grateful that you are present with us every step of the way. Good, bad, ugly, joy, pain, sorrow, unresolved grief. You are there and you are here right now. So as we take this bread, as we drink this wine, let it be to us the body and blood of Jesus, this reminder that we are never, ever alone. Amen. Thank you.